Spahn, Aaron, Matthews, just some of the names of the boys from Bushville that brought Milwaukee its first and only World Series championship. 50 years later, the surviving members of the 1957 Braves are back in town for a special reunion. New at 6, 12 News' Mike Miller is live at Miller Park. Mike, what an unbelievable gathering.
It really was nice to be here today, Shelby. You know, a couple of weeks ago, the 1982 Brewers had a little reunion to remember 25 years ago when they went to the World Series and barely lost. Today, as you said, about a dozen surviving members of the Milwaukee Braves were in town to commemorate a title they won 50 years ago. Lots of smiles from these former teammates as they posed in front of a monument to their team. Some of them haven't seen each other for decades. They beat the mighty Yankees in the 1957 World Series, winning Game 7 in New York. That's a bond that can never be broken. In a news conference a couple of hours ago, some of the stars talked about the bond they had with the fans of Milwaukee.
I feel like the fans were the greatest part of our game. And the second part of our game, that we had some men that learned how to play a boy's game. And that was the glue to the fans.
Hank Aaron hit 44 home runs that year. He was the most valuable player in the league, and he made $22,000.
Home run for Henley.
You know, it just happened that during the time when we were coming up, you know, the money just wasn't there. You know, we didn't have an agent. We didn't have anybody to work for us, talk for us. So we had to take whatever the owners were giving us.
Yeah, Hank Aaron told me a couple of years before he made $22,000, he was making $5 grand. That's what he broke in, $5,000. But he does not begrudge today's players their $100 million contracts. Shelby, you mentioned earlier a couple of big names, Warren Spahn, Eddie Matthews, a couple of the players that are no longer with us. They are deceased, but these guys really have fun getting together. A lot of them are going to be at a dinner tonight, a $300 a plate dinner that's been sold out for a long, long time. Live at Miller Park, Mike Miller, WISN 12.
Yeah, those guys weren't wearing the bling or driving the fancy cars.
No, they do have a World Series ring. It doesn't look like the rings nowadays. I remember when I was, what would I have been, 7 years old, 1958, I was at my very first ball game the year after the World Series.
Wow.
The Brewers were drawing the Braves were drawing like 3,000 people way back 50 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.